The O'Reilly Factor is on tonight.
I was elected to end wars and not start them.
President Obama goes all in as he tries to convince not just Congress, but the American people that the U.S. should attack Syria. But will it work?
واليمين نطاق وستدفعون دماءنا أضعافها يوم بيوم والدم استحقاق.
Plus, who really are the Syrian rebels? Freedom fighters or al-Qaeda terrorists? We'll have an investigation.
It was unanimous that chemical weapons were used. Obviously, this is disputed by President Putin.
Each of us stuck to their own position. He doesn't agree with my arguments, and I don't agree with his.
And the world's oddest odd couple, Vladimir Putin and President Obama. Does the Russian boss have the upper hand? Caution, you are about to enter the no-spin zone, and the factor begins right now. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Ingram, in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. The people versus the establishment. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. Today at the G20 in St. Petersburg, President Obama acknowledged the steep hill he has to climb back home for military action in Syria. And his planned address to the nation Tuesday may not do him any good.
It's conceivable that at the end of the day, I don't persuade a majority of the American people that it's the right thing to do. And then each member of Congress is going to have to decide, if I think it's the right thing to do for America's national security and the world's national security, then how do I vote? Ultimately, you listen to your constituents, but you've also got to make some decisions about what you believe is right for America.
Now, when the president tried to explain why he went to Congress, he instead made a stark concession.
I did not put this before Congress just as a political point or as symbolism. I put it before Congress because I could not honestly claim that the threat posed by Assad's use of chemical weapons on innocent civilians and women and children posed a imminent direct threat to the United States.
Bingo! That is one of the main reasons why the American people, left, right, and center, are so vehemently against blowing one dime in Syria or jeopardizing the lives of our military personnel there. There is no imminent threat, but there are major questions that this administration cannot, to this day, adequately answer. Questions about the identity and motivation of the rebels, questions about how we'd pay for all of this, questions about what our real objectives are and whether they're achievable without major mission creep. After a week of trying to sell this, the administration and its supporters in the GOP establishment have raised more questions than they've answered. This is why, with the exception of a coterie of Washington elites, left, right, and center are united against military action in Syria in this country. So, will our representatives be guided by the bipartisan demands of the people, including most veterans and active duty military who are overwhelmingly opposed? Or will they continue to follow a path of endless spending on wars to enforce international norms, even though the rest of the world strongly opposes such wars? The time has come for the American people to draw their own red line. The establishment has failed us on many fronts. A jobless recovery, skyrocketing debt, porous borders, wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan where we paid dearly, had great men and women fighting, but in the end we accomplished very little. They should stop trying to sell us more wars against non-existent threats and start doing their jobs on the home front. And I'm telling you, if they continue to push unpopular policies, the people will eventually take their power away and send them packing. Our enemies love to see us become weaker by squandering our resources and overextending our military. This ends up leading to more chaos and more suffering in the end by innocents. A stronger, more prosperous America, not more establishment wars of choice, will lead to a more stable, peaceful world. And that's the memo. Now on to the top story reaction. With us now is Robert Kagan, an old friend, and he's the senior fellow at the Brookings Institute. Mr. Kagan, now you and I over the years have talked a lot about Iraq, and you're a learned scholar and an incredibly prolific writer. But in the end, when you look at this today, has the administration not lost ground in the past week with how they've tried to sell this war, justify the war, and maybe even circumscribe the length, the duration, and the commitment in this war?
I think they've clearly lost ground, and not just in this past week. I mean, the public mood really shouldn't be that surprising when you consider that for 5 years, President Obama has been telling the American people that they should be nation building at home, not involved in overseas, that we should be getting out of the Middle East and we shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. Now he turns on a dime and says it's a big threat, we have to do something about it, and I'm not at all surprised that the American people have whiplash in this situation. So he has a huge job to do, and they're not doing it very well, to try to explain to the American public what is at stake here. And I disagree with you. I think there really are substantial American interests at stake in what's going on in the Middle East, and particularly in Syria. And I worry that, as we have in the past, as we did in the 1920s and 30s, we want to try to look away from a dangerous world. Eventually it comes back to bite us.
Why were we moving into more of an isolationist mood in the 1930s, though? Was it not, Bob, because of what happened in World War I, that the American people believed that that was the war to end all wars, but it ended up empowering what ultimately became the Third Reich? So there was this idea that isolationism just popped up for no reason. It popped up because of failed policies in the United States, and that's the same thing that's happened now. What happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, both wars, I was a huge supporter of, and I love our troops. I do a lot, as much as I can, to help them. But the public doesn't see the bang for the buck. We're weaker after all these military engagements. China hasn't been involved in any wars lately, have they? They're pretty strong right now.
Well, first of all, your history is excellent, so I appreciate that. It was a reaction to World War I, and it was, to some extent, an understandable reaction, although I think it was ultimately an overreaction. And the problem that American public opinion can go swinging wildly from one side all the way to the other side. Whose fault
is that?
Well, I mean, it's
the elite's
it's
fault,
all of us.
is it
No,
not?
it isn't. I mean, it's everybody's fault. In the case of the 20s and 30s, the elite was exactly where the public was. So I think what the real question is does any of this matter or not? And that the public opinion, you know perfectly well, we were both supporters of the Iraq War, and so was the overwhelming majority of the American people.
What happened during the prosecution of the war?
Then
George
it went
Bush
badly.
ended up not caring that the public was not in tune with how this was making their
I don't
lives
think he
better.
didn't care. I think there were some bad military decisions made, and we paid a big price for them, and we're still paying a price for it. And I agree with you.
This is part of that, right? This is part of the legacy of Iraq, because people see the broken men who came back and women, the collapsed economy, joblessness here, and they're like, well, wait a second, Iraq today is in total chaos. I mean, you know what's happened over the past 3 weeks.
Well, it was in better shape before Barack Obama decided to pull out every last American troop and made that decision.
Oh, Obama's been a disaster. There's no doubt about that.
Right. I mean, that people have been making terrible mistakes, there's no question about it. But, unfortunately, that doesn't absolve us from the need to make a decision now about what's in our interests.
Who are we funding in Syria today? I mean, you know what we found out about factions inside the opposition movement.
No, there were factions inside the Syrian movement, and clearly there is Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda affiliates operating, I think, in relatively small numbers. There is a much larger group of the Free Syrian Army, which we have a lot of knowledge about, and they are not jihadists, and they are not moderates. Now, I mean, they are moderates, they're not extremists. And the problem is, and this is something, again, that the Obama administration has brought us to, by not supporting those more moderate elements, we have left the field open to the jihadists. And if we continue to do nothing, they get stronger and stronger.
Well, we're
and
getting weaker, though. Aren't we weaker, though, over the last 12 years? I mean,
I think that's tremendously overstated. I know the argument, and I've actually responded to it in a book where I've tried to explain why I don't think that we are in as much decline as people say. I would say we are much more in a decline of mood than in actual capacity.
I mean, we have 63% of the country only participating in this economy and jobs today. I mean, we have black home ownership at lows that go back to the 1995
That's all true. The question, however, is that's absolutely right. Although, how much more? I guess the question I would like to ask is, how much more will we be hurting if we are living in a world where all kinds of dictators are using chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction, where we've retreated in the face of Iranian challenges, in the face of Russian challenges, in the face of Hezbollah. Believe it or not, things can get worse. And the fact that we are suffering economically at home does not mean it's in our interest to do nothing about what's going on overseas.
That's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us,
Thank
Bob
you.
Kagan. And up next, President Obama faces an uphill battle to convince Congress to support military action in Syria. So can he change enough minds to get what he wants? We'll have a special report. Right back. In the personal story segment tonight, President Obama and Russian President Vladimir Putin have had a rocky relationship. First, Russia thumbed its nose at us over granting asylum to Uber leaker Edward Snowden. And now the Russian president has become the world leader arguing the loudest against a military strike in Syria. But today, the dueling leaders tried to play nice at the G20 summit.
The conversation lasted for probably 20 minutes. It was a very friendly conversation. We stick to our guns. Everybody remained with his position. We understand each other. We listen to each other. We understand arguments.
Last night we had a good discussion, and I want to give President Putin credit that he facilitated, I think, a full airing of views on the issue.
So who has the upper hand in high-stakes game of diplomacy here on the world stage now? Here now with us is the Heritage Foundation's Niall Gardner. Niall, well, the only thing missing was like kind of the hearts above their, a little fluttering. I mean, they were trying to make this look good, but what came out of this? And in the end, who looks like they have a stronger, firmer grip on this?
Well, I don't think this was a very good day for Barack Obama. In fact, I think this was a very bad day for him. After all, he did not secure today the international coalition that he so badly needs to support military action. And let's face it, President Obama has implemented a policy of appeasement towards the Russians for the last 4.5 years. And where has that got the United States today? I think that Vladimir Putin, frankly, walked all over Barack Obama today, and this was a rather humiliating day for the president. And of course, he's advancing a policy on the world stage that most key U.S. allies don't actually support. Only the French so far have signed up to military action alongside President Obama.
They made a big deal today, the White House, about this coalition letter that they released, which was included, France, Canada, some other countries, about how we believe that chemical weapons obviously are bad and there should be a strong reaction, international reaction. But there was no understanding or agreement about military force. So
yes.
While that letter was all well and good, what the heck did that really represent?
Yeah, exactly. 10 members of the G20 signed up to a statement basically condemning Assad's brutal regime and also calling for strong consequences. What they did not do, of course, was support Obama's call for a military intervention. And so President Obama did not actually achieve what he set out to achieve in Russia. And this was actually a bit of an embarrassment for the president. So far, his grand international coalition has Barack Obama and François Hollande, the socialist French president. Compare that with President Bush's 40-country strong coalition
that they ridiculed,
that went into Iraq, that was ridiculed by the
everyone.
left. But President Bush, I think, was a real professional on the world stage. He wasn't necessarily greatly loved. He was, though, respected by America's allies.
Isn't that ironic now when you look back on all the criticism of Bush? And look, I had plenty of it for the way things ended up in Iraq and so forth. But they kept saying about Bush, oh, it was my way or the highway. He was a cowboy. And what did Putin's people do this week? They called Barack Obama the cowboy, reaching for his Colt revolver. And so they brought all that language back. And it's like, it's head spinning after the apology tour, the reset button, the failed translation of that, and the flexibility. Where's all that flexibility he promised Medvedev last year or the year before?
Well, the reality is that President Obama looks awfully weak. He looks like an amateur
Is it naive?
on the world stage.
Is he not smart? He's smart, obviously. That's not fair. But is he is he hopelessly naive? Does he believe his personality will transcend nationalist interests on the part of China and Russia?
I think it's a combination of all of those, actually, Laura. I do think he is naive on many fronts. He's a very ineffective leader. He's someone who doesn't command respect abroad. He certainly doesn't instill fear into the hearts of America's enemies. And at the moment, he's trying to be a war leader, but he doesn't come across, frankly, as General Patton on the world stage.
I think of Reagan with Gorbachev at Reykjavik. I think I was still working at the White House as a young little speechwriter back then, and him coming out of that meeting with Gorbachev, and Reagan was steely and his back strong. He walked out. People didn't know what happened. It turns out he wasn't going to agree to these concessions that all the elites in Washington wanted him to agree to, and it ended up better off for the United States.
Yes, well, Reagan was a real leader. He's someone who projected strong American global leadership. Barack Obama is exactly the opposite, actually. He just projects sheer weakness, dithering, indecisiveness. He is, by all accounts, yeah, he's a bit like a French leader, really, and I think
that's why they're getting along so well.
You know, that's why he gets on so well with François Hollande, who really is a clueless French president.
Dr. Gardner, good to see you.